You're listening to Level Up with Wondr, a podcast where we take listeners on a journey through the exciting world of gaming, tech, and innovation. Join the Wondr Nation team as we talk with a diverse group of pros who have taken their skills to the next level.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Level Up with Wondr. I'm Anika Howard, President and CEO of Wondr Nation, and we're filming this episode during Native American Heritage Month as part of our ongoing mission to highlight diverse voices. I'm excited to welcome today's guest, Chairman Rodney Butler. Rodney Butler is the chairman of the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation, a role that he's held since 2010. Prior to being appointed chairman, he held multiple tribal leadership roles and is widely regarded for his commitment to the community, collaboration, and forward-thinking leadership that continues to redefine what's possible for tribal nations across the country. Chairman Butler is president of the board of directors for the Native American Finance Officers Association, serves as co-chairman of the board of directors for the MCT LLC, and is on the board of the Foxwoods El San Juan Casino. He also serves on the U.S. Treasury Tribal Advisory Committee, is an alternate vice president for the National Congress of American Indians, and is on the board of the Indian Gaming Association, Roger Williams University, and Mystic Aquarium. I'm also very happy that he is on the board of directors for Wondr Nation as well. And with that busy schedule, we're very, very lucky to have him as part of Wondr Nation, but especially lucky to have him as part of the Level Up with Wondr podcast. So welcome.
Thank you. That was a lot.
It was.
I don't even realize half the things that we all do, but no, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
So one of my favorite things has become people know your glory, but not necessarily your story. And so what I want to do today is to dig into your journey to becoming where you are today. So if you can maybe start and talk a little bit about kind of what inspired you. I'm always curious. When you were growing up, what did you want to be?
What did I want to be? It's funny because what I wanted to be, I'm not good at all. I actually really wanted to be a basketball player because I love basketball. I love sports. And I was a decent athlete. But ultimately, I realized probably by like early high school that basketball actually was not my sport. And so I needed to focus on some other things. The good thing was that I always did focus on academics. And my dad drilled it into me at a very young age. I'm glad that he let me believe in a dream, but also kept me balanced and focused on school and doing well and just being a good human being.
And so what made you interested in tribal government? And what did you do before you won council?
Yeah, in those early years, growing up, going into college and post-college, I had no desire to actually be in tribal government. And certainly not an elected official. I'd gone to school originally for engineering, switched up by my junior year into finance, and graduated with a finance degree from University of Connecticut. And what I thought I was going to do was take the summer off. Stock market was going crazy. I was kind of investing for fun. And ultimately, that's where I wanted to land with a career, was something in investment banking. But in the meantime, I was brilliant like everyone is today with cryptocurrency and everything else, invested a lot and lost a lot in the market when it crashed back in 1999. And I realized I needed to get a job. Fortunately, my family was willing to allow me to participate in what we had at the time was a career development program here at Mashantucket. And I started in the finance department here and I actually did a tour in various departments. I toured around. I mean, I did the grind work. I was working on the grave shift in the coin department when casinos had coin. I was in AP and GL and the various aspects of finance. The good thing was I got to see everything. And then I settled in as an analyst in the casino industry. And then from there, our tribe was fortunate enough to focus on diversification early on. And we had invested in various non-gaming properties and assets. And there was an opportunity for me to join that group. I think that's where I started getting more exposure to the council. Because when I was working at the casino, we were just in our own bubble over there. But when I started working with the tribal assets, the hotels that we had, the golf courses, there was a lot more regular interaction with the council. From there, I ended up joining some of the subcommittees of the council. It was on the finance committee, administrative support committee. But even in that, I had no aspiration to be in this position. Just as tribal politics go, small town tribal politics, there was an election year and some family had asked me if I would put my name in. And I'm like, yeah, I'll run for council. And, if I get elected, great. If not, I'm doing what I like to do, running these businesses and working with my cousins. That year, I ended up getting elected. We have a 7-member council here at Pequot. And that year, there was 3 seats that were open. And I was the third highest vote getter. So, like, I barely got in, believe it or not. And the rest was kind of history from there.
Good. And so when you kind of look back on your first year on council, can you talk about that and kind of what your impressions were? Were you thinking, okay, I found my career, or was it
No,
like, okay.
no, not at all. I actually, my first year on council, I was the youngest member of council by a lot. I was 26 when I was first elected. And at Mashantucket, you can't run for council until 25. So I was one of the youngest members of council in our history at that time. And so I was more in awe, and we were doing some really big things then, a lot of expansion going on. The first decade of Foxwoods is when I came on the council. And so a lot of growth and a lot of opportunity, and programs were expanding, and we're building housing developments on the reservation and just bringing community back. And in that council that I was serving with, were literally the titans of Pequot Tribal Council at the time. I mean, Skip Hayward was still on the council, Kenny Reels, Mike Thomas, and Pedro Johnson, and some of these others that just you could only dream of sitting on council with. And if I tell people now, they don't believe me. It was pretty fascinating for me. And I was just an at-large council member my first year on council. And then into my second year, the treasurer didn't get elected. And so that opened up the treasurer's seat. And similar to the way that I put my name in for council, I had a finance background, but I wasn't thinking, yeah, I want to be treasurer. And the council themselves were like, hey, would you consider being treasurer? You have this background. Yeah, you're a little young, but you have the experience. And so, same thing. I said, sure, I'll be treasurer. It was the right place, right time. We were doing some major refinancing, some major debt issuance. I was just thrown into the fire. And it's funny because I actually remember doing, debt capital raise road shows with the chairman at the time, Mike Thomas, and I was in the room with like the senior level bankers at B of A and Wells Fargo and others. And they literally thought I was just like the assistant in the room. Right. And Chairman Thomas at the time would be like, no, that's the treasurer. It's kind of funny to remember that.
Sometimes it's like when preparation meets opportunity. I mean, you had the background, you had the experience, and you had that knowledge to be able to step in and step up.
That's funny, Anika. I use that a lot, especially with some of our younger family members and employees, that you never know when opportunity is going to arrive. And so just prepare yourself and be ready when it does. And don't fear it, right? Just go for it. And worst that can happen is it doesn't work out and you keep moving. And you learn
Yeah.
a lot from it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that served me well too. And so having the opportunity to serve on council with such titans very early on, how did that shape your perspective on leadership, and what type of leader do you consider yourself to be as a result of that?
Mm, that's a good question. As far as what kind of leader do I think I am, I'm a constant learner, and I observe and I sit, and you know this very well from our interactions. I'm very, very patient, and I'm just and I'm an internal thinker. And so you laughed a little too hard on the patience thing there, but I internalize a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it was just it was almost like being in a classroom with professors that have been teaching a subject for a long time. I mean, at that point, Skip had been on council for 20 something years, and and the balance of them had been on at least half that time, if not longer. And so I was just a sponge. I was picking up good habits, bad habits, and just trying to figure out what kind of leader I wanted to be, and from each of them, what created success for them, because all of us are different. From a leadership perspective, for me, I've always been one that I always give people benefit of the doubt, and I'm very trusting. And I think that's the way you should be, whether it's employees or family. Most people want to do good, and you have to believe that. And so even if someone does something that's a mistake, it was, in my mind, it's been with good intentions,
Yeah.
and we can all learn from that. And so I've just been an open leader and a lifelong learner.
Having the opportunity to work with you over my time at Foxwoods and now at Wondr, I always kind of look at you as a servant leader, because you always put everyone first, and looking at just a lot of things that you've done that have been very selfless. Like you were reading off the list at the beginning, and you're like, wow, I didn't realize they do it, because don't do it out of obligation. You do it because it's right. And so I always feel like that's kind of one of the reasons that I think people really gravitate to you.
Yeah. I think all leaders should be doing that. Just do what's right, and you'll know when it's not right. It's okay to disagree in leadership as long as we do it respectfully and we're doing it with good intention.
I want to switch gears a little bit. One of the things that struck me when I first started with Foxwoods is going through orientation and going to the Mashantucket Pequot Research Museum and watching The Witness. So can you, for the listeners who might not know the full history of what makes Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation unique? I know we can spend the whole episode talking about it, but it's
Yeah. Yeah.
for kind of the highlight of the journey.
Yeah. Well, I think to say that we're unique is probably inaccurate. I think that's what makes us unique, that we recognize that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the museum and the Witness. The museum's the largest Native American museum on the planet, and we're very proud of that. And so within there's a short video called The Witness, which describes our story as one of the first contact people in these lands. And really, and this is where I go back to the fact that it's not unique. What we say is what happened to us in the Pequot War in 1636 to 38 until the Treaty of Hartford was in place is the same exact story that every tribe after us faced
Yes.
and so experienced. In that sense, we were unique in being the very first to experience that and be the very first in the Americas to have a treaty that said we no longer existed, and the attempted extermination of our people and the disallowing of our language and sending off my Pequot ancestors into slavery. Yes, that makes us unique because we were one of the first in that. Sadly, that then became the norm following what happened here at Mashantucket. Our story happened 200 years before the tribes in the Midwest and on the West Coast. And, it was really fascinating for me because I don't even think about that very often. But we were hosting the National Congress of American Indians here for their mid-year conference back in the spring. And I was giving that story of our history to all these tribal leaders from all over the country. And so many of them came up to me afterwards, like, you guys, wait, you said 1636? Our treaty was in 1875 and our treaty was in 1890. And like, you guys were battling 200 years, 250 years before us. And yes, we were. But what happened here eventually happened to everybody.
Yeah. When I look at that, I know kind of every time we go to the budgeting season, a lot of the things that we do are aligned kind of our core objectives, but wonder with the tribal tenants, how did that perseverance kind of lead to a lot of the culture and governance and tenants that are in place today?
Yeah. So, I mean, you have an inside track on us because you're with us and been through our budgeting process. And we probably frustrated you. I know I've frustrated you many a times. And sometimes I'm proud of that. Seriously, though, it's ingrained in us. And just like the generational trauma is the generational success, the legacy of perseverance and the strength of our ancestors, it's who we are. And so for that to come out in our strategic objectives and our mission statement for the tribe is just pulling out, what we know of ourselves. To your point, again, being a very successful employee here and running one of our most critical operations, we employ those values in everything that we do, and not just in enterprise, but in our governance and our relationships.
One of the things that people often ask me is what is the difference between kind of my experiences on the supplier side or in commercial gaming? And I really kind of said that it's the sense of purpose and altruism that you have when you're working for a tribe because you're working for something much, much bigger than yourself. And you're working for something that has a longer lasting impact. You're looking 7 generations ahead. And in many cases, you're not just looking at that one quarter or that one moment, you're looking at the impact of your decisions.
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't, like, when you were at Caesars IGT, you weren't meeting, the CEO's cousins and fourth cousins, and you definitely weren't coming to their barbecues. Here, we embrace who we are, and those that embrace us have longevity with us, and those that don't embrace us, they move on pretty quickly.
Now, looking forward, what do you think are some of the current challenges and opportunities that are most critical for Mashantucket's future?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, we find ourselves as advocates for Pequot, but also for the balance of Indian country and policy and sovereignty. The key battle that we all face is sovereignty at large and making sure that it's not eroded. We are constantly educating people on what sovereignty means and our ability to self govern as sovereign nations. And that's always a challenge because depending on the situation we're in and depending on what someone is trying to get over on us, they'll treat us as if we are just another, municipality, or they'll treat us as if we're another company, and we're not. There's been several occasions where I've said to legislators the simple fact that, okay, you might not be agreeing with us right now, but we're not going anywhere. And so 10 years from now, you won't be here, but my nation will still be here and we'll still be pressing these same issues. So we can resolve it now, or we can,
Wait it out.
wait it out, because we're good. We've been through 400 years of this. We can go through another decade or two. We play the long game and we stick with it.
And so speaking of that, when you're looking at building those relationships, what do you look for in a strong partnership? And for anyone that kind of wanted to partner with Mashantucket or a tribal or sovereign nation in general, what should they be bringing to the table?
Well, you ended with the key point. They have to respect sovereignty. And if they don't understand it, they have to be willing to learn and then work within our systems. And again, knowing that from a deal making perspective, you're doing a deal with someone that you want to be in a long-term relationship with. But as you're negotiating, don't go for the short-term win or the quick win that eventually is going to, bite you in the end, because we won't forget. Right? We just don't forget. That's the reality. It's the long game again. And so
No.
I think respecting that, respecting our communities is critically important, and giving back. I mean, Anika, I keep using you as an example. I mean, you were just at our veterans powwow this weekend. You come out to Scamits, you show up to those events where the community is, and you meet us in the community. And that's important to Indian country, that our partners embrace and engage in our communities.
No. And I agree. And I think one of the things too that we're aligned with is I don't do it because like I need to. I do it because I want to. And it's not an obligation. I mean, I think it's just a requirement, especially as we start looking towards the future and the current state of tribal gaming, kind of really wanting to lean into, not just helping Wondr be successful, but how do we kind of lift all the entities up together. But when we talk about tribal gaming specifically, what do you think were some of the biggest challenges and opportunities that
Well, yeah, the challenges now are a saturated market, right? The opportunity to grow is limited for most jurisdictions. Now it's just in the trench battling and battling for market share, and that gets expensive, right? And there are
really?
very few tribes that have the capital to grow outside of the US. And so there are some markets that are opening up, but you need to invest $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion. And that's just not reality
Yeah.
for most tribes and most commercial operators. And so the opportunities in gaming are limited. There is a massive opportunity with social gaming and online sports betting. And we're fortunate enough to have a relationship with our jurisdiction here in the state of Connecticut, where we're one of 6 states in the country that has
Oh,
online gaming, right? Many have retail sports betting, a little bit less have online sports betting. I never water down the complexities that other tribes have in their states, because we're only dealing with one other federally recognized tribe here in Connecticut with our cousins, the Mohegan. And so negotiating a tri-party agreement between us, Mohegan, and the state isn't that. I mean, it was complicated enough, but it's not as complex as Minnesota, where you have 12 tribes, or Michigan, where you have 20, or California, where you have 100 something.
yeah.
And so as I speak with other tribal leaders and I hear their concerns with going online with either sports or casino, it's not one size fits all. And it's been great for us here at Mashantucket. I mean, obviously the threat that everyone's been talking about, and not to beat a dead horse here, but I mean, it's a predictions market and where that could go. The lack of regulation, the fact that they can use that technology everywhere and anywhere, whether it's regulated or not, whether you have agreements or not, is a huge issue. I think it's only a matter of time before those operators of predictions apps figure out how to go the historical horse racing / class 2 bingo route. And now it's not just betting on sports, it's full blown iGaming through this prediction loophole. And that's going to have a major impact on all of us, especially for the smaller tribal operators that are in the relatively rural locations with limited populations. If I don't even have to go to your casino because now I can
Yeah.
just use my app, I think it's going to hit a lot of folks in a hard way. And so I think it's something that we just have to fight.
And so with that, I mean, diversification becomes even more important. So what are some of the things that tribal nations can do to diversify beyond traditional gaming I know that Mashantucket had a diversification strategy for a long time. And so what are the things that have been most impactful?
I used to talk about this a lot when I was treasurer, and it wasn't popular because it's not fun, but it was kind of my investment background. And I remember being on panels at the Indian Gaming Association and the FOA and other orgs. And it was all about, what's next after gaming. And I'm just like, just put your money away. Just invest. Like it's really that simple. You don't have to chase the latest, greatest ideas. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are trying to take advantage of tribes, and you're going to get all kinds of proposals thrown at you. And the easiest thing that you can do, and one of the things that I'm very proud of in my 22 years up here, in my first year as treasurer, I locked in our endowment portfolio and solidified it into our constitution and made sure that we were putting money away, regardless of what else was happening around us. The sooner that tribes that have the ability to do that, it's almost like the analogy that I was using. You've heard me say it. You're on the plane and the flight attendant tells you, and in case of emergency, put your oxygen mask on first before you help others. That's from a financial soundness perspective. That's the oxygen mask. And people don't think of that as diversification, but if you have a separate cash flow stream that can grow large enough and spin off dividends that offset the fluctuations in your gaming market, that's diversification, right? That's what all investors do. And so I think tribes need to think the same way. If you're really into business and don't want to do just simple investment, a lot of tribes are finding success in government contracting. The current administration, there's been some concern of whether that would stay in place, but we've gotten some good reassurances that this administration actually supports government contracting with tribes and the opportunities are there. There's tribes that have taken advantage of their natural resources and turned those into an economic base. We don't have that here at Mashantucket. We only have 1,600 acres. And so we're limited from that perspective. Before gaming, back in the 70s and the early 80s, we did some timbering, but again, we only had so many acres. The sooner that you can get a really solid financial plan, and I know it's difficult with the politics we all deal with and the turnover you see at leadership levels, the sooner that you can put away that base, I mean, that to me is true diversification. And then from there, you can decide to branch off in other areas, but you have to put the oxygen mask on first and make sure that you're stable.
So I want to switch a little bit more internal. We talked about the kind of revenue, but really now wanting to talk about what does that allow you to do
Yeah.
as a sovereign nation? So cultural preservation, education, supporting services, infrastructure. What are some of the initiatives that you're most proud of that gaming and some of the revenue generating initiatives have allowed the tribe to do?
Yeah, I think that is a critically important point in this entire conversation where, there's people that refer to us as the Foxwoods tribe, not the Pequot, the Foxwoods tribe. And other tribes get the same thing because all they look at is the gaming and they don't understand that gaming is simply a means to an end in order for us to advance our tribal governments, right? And our nations. We don't have the same economic tools as everyone else in the tax base that could support those critical programs and services. And so having economic success has allowed us exactly that, to provide services to our members that just didn't even exist or weren't even a dream several decades ago. I always think about my elders in the last 30 years, the growth of elders in the Pequot community. And we went from counting them by the tens, 30 or 40 elders, and now we're up over 160 elders. And that's not because they miraculously started eating well and taking care of themselves, it's because we had the economic ability to invest in our health programs and invest in our education programs and invest in our social service platforms and networks. And that's allowed us to live longer, happy, healthier lives, as said in our mission statement. I think that's the real key to economic success. And I almost tie it back to the diversification. Part of that diversification is having a strong financial base within your community as well, right? The more that your community can stand on its own and not have to rely on those government services, the better off your nation will be from an economic success perspective. I mean, the fact that we now, 30 years ago, we didn't have Pequot doctors and lawyers and CEOs. Now we do, and it's normal. It's normal that kids are graduating from grad school and law school. That wasn't even a dream or thinkable 3 decades ago. Investment in those programs have benefited us tremendously.
Now, I mean, one of the things that I just remember very distinctly was the role that the tribe played during COVID, not just kind of internal, but for the community at
Yeah.
large too. And I think that's something that isn't talked about enough. That
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think COVID shone a bright light on tribal communities across the country and just how we think differently. The fact that when we were getting access to medication and goods that weren't available to the broader public, we would deploy those within our community, but then quickly deploy those to our employees and to the surrounding agencies. People were getting the COVID vaccine, whatever you think about it, they were getting it through us before they were getting it through the state of Connecticut. And that doesn't happen if you're working at a public company, right? I mean, they just service their own. It's a different mindset. The success that we have, we've deployed that. We use that to create programs within Mashantucket, but we also see where we came from and how much the surrounding community supports us, and we rely on them as well for our own success, that we invest in the surrounding community through the various agencies and food pantries and shelters and social services. We don't just invest here at Mashantucket, we invest in the entire region.
absolutely. And I've seen and experienced that firsthand. When we talk about legacy, I always think about kind of the next generation. So, how do you engage young people in caring for Pequot culture and Pequot language and Pequot traditions?
Yeah, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this, what made us unique was being a first contact nation and having the first treaty that eliminated us and said we could not speak our language and that the Pequot name was outlawed essentially. What we've done is nothing short of a miracle, but also what we're most proud of in reclaiming our language and bringing that back and instilling it and our culture into our youth with the Child Development Center. We start at the very youngest ages and we make sure that our young Pequots are familiar with the medicine circle and familiar with our cultures and embracing those. These are things that just a few generations ago they had to hide. And so investing in that and making sure that to them it's just normal and it's part of their life is incredibly important and rewarding. And the beauty of that is we have a shared language with many of our sister tribes in the Northeast. And so it's actually brought us regionally closer together as well as we've recreated and rebuilt our language. And there's certain dialects that are differences between us and Mohegan and us and Narragansett and Mashpee. But at the core, it's the same language. And so it's strengthened our communities from a collaboration perspective. So it's beautiful to see that.
Now, one of my favorite side quests, because I get many, is kind of being able to be part of the economic committee that is working on the revitalization. So, working on creating mobile apps that can help facilitate kind of that language preservation. So, that's another, I think, benefit you have. You get a chance to kind of do what your core is, but you also get a chance to be part of lots of other things. This has been a great conversation. And now I want to give you a little bit of time to reflect on things that have motivated you personally. So, who have been some of your biggest mentors on your journey? Like, does it have to be professional? I mean, I think when we
Yeah, yeah. I
ask,
I never like that question because it feels like there's so many
and I think
folks,
maybe
people that have,
mentor, yeah, and maybe
yeah.
mentor isn't the word, but just like
No, no,
who
no,
has
no. But that's the go-to. That's the go-to. I mean, Anika, I've learned from you. I mean, as much as you don't believe that at times, but I think I started off the conversation when you asked about my leadership style and how I believe in being a lifetime learner and that you're never too old to learn something new. And in fact, if you can't learn something new, then it's probably time to step down as a leader. Right? Because you get to the point where you feel like you know everything, then you're not at, in my perspective, you're not adding value and you're not leading. Obviously, I go back to my parents and what they've done for me. My story is both my parents were brilliant enough to know that together it wasn't going to work out. And so they were divorced at a very young age and they did it respectfully and made sure that no matter which path they went on in life, my brother and I were well taken care of. And if that meant, living with my dad versus traditionally people living with their mom, that's what they chose to do. I was raised by my dad for the most part, but spending a lot of time with my mother. And it gained tremendous value from both of them in that respect. I think most importantly, looking back on it, you know, the fact that you can be civil and respectful to each other, even if you have differences. And to me, that was embedded in me. because they did it naturally, or maybe I don't know if it was natural to them. I'm sure if I asked them, like at the time, they were probably screaming and yelling at each other, but I never saw that,
Yeah.
or rarely saw that. And so I think that was embedded in me, is that's normal, right? People have differences, and there's no reason to harbor those differences and the frustration. Just you can move on for the success of everyone. And I think that was an incredibly valuable lesson in life. But like, there's so many people that had an incredible amount of influence in me. And as I said earlier, when I first got on council, being with these just titans of Indian country on council, I mean, there was so much to learn there. And the various CEOs that we've had work for us here at Foxwoods, we've had some great attorneys and CFOs, tribal managers here at Mashantucket that I've just been a sponge with, and learning just how to stay balanced. My wife obviously is the biggest influence in my life.
Amazing.
And yeah, she's incredible, and keeps me humble and reminds me every day like what's important. And I think also for me in my elected position, you know, having my son was born 2.5 weeks after my very first election. So our elections happen at our annual meeting in November. We don't take our seat till January. So it was November, whatever, 3rd or 4th that the election happened. And my son was born on the 22nd of November. And so having that perspective as a 26-year-old new member of the governing body, like I always was reminded of what's important every day that I went home. I think that shaped me in a way that most people don't have the opportunity to have an experience of. And so in a way, in that sense, my kids were my mentor. My wife was my mentor. And so there's so many influences.
I agree that I feel like when people think about mentorship, they think I think it's kind of this circular that everyone is, you're a sponge and you learn from everyone. And I think, as long as you're open to be able to take the lessons when it comes, I think that's one of the things that are really important. You've had this amazing career in tribal government. What are some of the most meaningful moments that you look back and you're like, wow, that was a moment in time that was really impactful or pivotal.
Pivotal. When I look back, and it's human nature, we remember the hardships.
Sure.
And I think looking at some of the political challenges that we have gone through as a community, looking at the financial hardships where we started versus where we're at today, we never forget that. And then going through almost going back to that moment of hardship when we defaulted and had to go through restructuring, and just the way the community, just in every one of those moments where there's difficulty. And I think again, the financial crisis, COVID, and many other moments where the community just came together, and the level of support and love for this nation, the Pequot Nation, has been the most rewarding moments that I've seen in leadership, and what drives me to do what I do over all these years. And that's always been, rewarding to see, and warming and encouraging from a leadership perspective. They'll let you know right away when something's wrong. Let me, I don't want to leave that out. I mean,
No,
there's
yeah,
nobody's shy about telling you when you're messing up. But
yeah, no, and I think you're kind of been very gracious about that because you know that it comes with the territory. That's kind of
Mhm.
it, with
Yeah,
much is given,
yeah.
much is required.
Yeah. But it's also, you have to have thick skin, because what you're getting in that moment is someone else's frustration
Yeah,
for what they're going through, and the belief that, and is rightfully so, that you can help and do something about it, even if it's just guidance or reassurance.
yeah.
And I've never taken criticism negatively. You have to have tough skin, and 99 times out of 100, it's coming from a good place, and it's just their pain and their challenge that they're going through.
No, no, I absolutely agree. And so we've kind of been very kind of reflective on your journey and the successes and trials that the tribe has had to date. What is your vision for the future for Mashantucket and for the tribal enterprises that the tribe has been able to cultivate?
I think, well, I don't necessarily have a vision. I joke with the chairman, Skip Hayward, that if I were chair back when he was chair, we wouldn't be where we're at, right? Because I just don't have that ability, as you know, Anika. I don't have that ability to think wildly and broadly. My vision is a collective vision, and like right now we're going through a community planning initiative where we brought in all facets of the community together and said, what do you want Mashantucket to be over the next 25, 30 years? I guess my vision is an inclusive government where we're, engaging with the community and working with the community to make sure that this nation represents everybody, and can support everybody. Now, the reality is we can't do everything, but I've also been fortunate enough to have a community that understands that. It's a democracy. The community decides this is what's the highest important right now, and then we move forward with that. If I had to say what is a vision of mine, the vision is that we have a collaborative process and vision for the entire community that I'm just able to facilitate the success of.
Now, I mean, I think that's really important because when you look back, you can always see the decisions that were made, but you never see the choices that were available. And I think that's kind of really key, making sure that, as you're doing that, that collective and collaboration allows for more choices, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, Monday morning quarterbacks are the greatest quarterbacks, right? Or Tuesday morning now because Monday Night Football. But people always reflect on, in particular, the example that gets used is, well, we have a 25% slot share with the state of Connecticut because of our agreement, and oh my gosh, how could you do that? Other tribes in other states are at 10%, 5%, zero. Well, at the time, it was 75% of something or 100% of nothing, right? It's hard to go back and say, well, what were the other options?
Yeah.
Because in that instance, there weren't a lot of great options. Other than that, this has been a great option. It's worked out well for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the moment that a decision is being made, there's so many factors that you have to take into play. And looking back, you never fully know or appreciate what was in the minds of those individuals that were making that decision. And so it's hard to judge them, especially knowing what I know and doing what I've been doing for so long. I don't judge anybody.
Neither do I. You started this conversation with talking about, like, you just had lunch with a young tribal member that just got elected to council. So it feels like almost like a full circle moment for you. What advice do you have for aspiring tribal leaders?
Engage. We're fortunate enough to have a youth council, a very connected youth council here at Mashantucket, and young aspiring leaders here at Mashantucket. And what I say to all of them is don't look for a leadership role, just be one naturally. We all lead in our own way in everything that we do. And so you don't have to be the chairman. You don't have to be on council. You don't have to be the CEO of Wondr. You can still be a leader in everyday life and look for those opportunities. Yeah. And if you're looking to get involved in what I'm doing and eventually be a leader of a tribal nation, learn about policy and learn about governance and look at your constitution and start to get involved in the many opportunities that we provide here at Pequot to sit in on some of the committees of the council and sit in on a council meeting. Yeah. But just be engaged. You don't just wake up one day and be like, hey, I want to be chairman.
Yeah.
I want to be chairman of Pequot. But there's so many paths to get here too. I mean, again, the way that I've described my path, there's members of my council that in their mind, they were always going to be on council and they manage their life that way. But what I've seen over the last 22 years, and even my limited engagement prior to that with the council, is that most just do what they do well. And it's the community that calls on them to be a leader. Just work hard, stay focused, and continue to grow yourselves and your skill set.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like really this focus of being of service and having kind of a passion for people and kind of wanting to make a difference. And so I think it starts here and then it grows through everything. My last question for you is, what legacy do you hope to leave?
I wish that it were up to me what a legacy would be for my community. And, people could just wave a magic wand and say they left a legacy, but this community is going to do whatever it's going to do after I'm gone. I am just a temporary placeholder in this position. And we have survived for centuries, regardless of who's been the leader of this nation. And so I think the legacy that I look for is one of awareness of who we are and belief in the strength of our community, and a community that is grounded in our culture, in our history, and realizing how important that is for our future success, and understanding that, being aware of that, and incorporating that into our future success. I think that's the legacy. Everybody being able to take the time to be more aware of the opportunities that we have here at Mashantucket, and then ultimately utilizing that for the benefit of the nation.
So I lied. I have one more question because I'm on.
No,
Yes.
this is like a normal meeting with you and I. Just lying to me all the time. This is what we do, Anika. Yeah.
No,
Everybody listening, Anika lies. She just says what she wants, and
I
then keeps it.
want to dig deeper
Okay.
because like, so I feel like, the chairman is what you do. You are the chairman of the Mashantucket Tribe, but it's not
Yeah.
really who you are. So
Yeah.
what is your legacy outside of chairman for the tribe? Like as a father, husband, son, brother, like what is the legacy that you personally, Rodney Butler, wants to leave, not chairman?
I just want to be remembered as someone that you could count on, and someone that is always going to be honest with you, someone that is fair and balanced and willing to listen, regardless of what the situation is and whether or not I agree or disagree. I think of like my kids, there's the hard conversations you have with your kids, and that, many of them can't talk with their parents about. And I've instilled in my kids that there's nothing off limits and I will never judge you. And I think that's the same way that I look at life with all of my interactions. Life is hard and everybody's different and we've all made mistakes. And so who am I to judge anybody? And who is anybody to judge me? So let's just get beyond that and let's see how we can work together. The legacy I would hope that people remember me by is just being leader aside, just someone that they could trust, could engage with, and really felt that I believed in them.
Thank you so much, Chairman Butler, for joining me on this episode of Level Up at Wondr. Thank you for sharing your story and your insights and your journey. I've enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure our listeners will as well. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you at our next meeting.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Anika, for your leadership. For anybody that doesn't know Anika, I'm sure you do after these series, but she is truly just a genuinely wonderful person and has been a blessing to our community and personally a joy to know. And so thank you, Anika.
Thank you. And I didn't even have to pay him to say that. So I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Level Up with Wondr. Visit wondrnation.com/level up for more podcast episodes about how we're reimagining the gaming entertainment industry. Want to level up your business? Visit our contact page at wondrnation.com to inquire about our strategic consulting or management services.